I was crouched behind my friend Jake's TV, tangled in a mess of cables, trying to figure out why the screen kept flickering. It was one of those lazy Saturday afternoons, the kind where you're just hanging out, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. Jake had called me over because I'm the guy who's good with tech, which really just means I've spent too many hours watching YouTube tutorials on fixing stuff. I'm no expert, just a guy who likes solving problems, whether it's a busted laptop or a glitchy router. Little did I know that day was about to take a turn I never saw coming when his girlfriend's mom of all people asked me if I wanted to stay longer. And let me tell you, that question hit me like a curvy ball, leaving me replaying it in my head for weeks. It all started with a text from Jake that morning. He was freaking out because his TV was acting up and he had a big game to watch that night. Jake's the kind of guy who takes his sports seriously. Miss a game and he's in a mood for days. He said the TV kept cutting out, flickering like it was haunted, and he needed it fixed ASAP. I told him I'd swing by no problem. I'm not a professional technician or anything, but I've always been the one friends call when their gadgets go haywire. I've got a knack for tinkering and honestly I kind of enjoy it. There's something satisfying about taking a broken thing and making it work again. So I grabbed my toolbox, really just a beat-up old backpack stuffed with a couple of screwdrivers, a multimeter, some spare HDMI cables, and a few other odds and ends, and headed over to Jake's place. Jake lives in a small apartment on the edge of town. It's not fancy, just a one-bedroom with mismatched furniture and a fridge that's always stocked with cheap beer. But it's got this cozy lived-in vibe that makes you feel at home. His girlfriend Sarah was there when I arrived, which wasn't unusual. They've been dating for about a year, and I'd hung out with her plenty of times. Sarah's cool, always quick with a joke, and she doesn't mind when Jake and I start geeking out over some random tech thing or arguing about who'd win in a hypothetical superhero fight. She's the kind of person who just rolls with it, and I like that about her. When I walked in, Jake was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, looking like he hadn't moved in hours. "Yo, man, thank God you're here," he said, barely glancing up. "This TV been glitching for days. It's driving me nuts." I laughed and told him to relax. I take a look. The TV was one of those older flats, greens, not ancient but definitely past its prime. It was a decent brand, but it had seen better days. Jake said the picture would cut out every few minutes, sometimes going completely black, sometimes just flickering like it was trying to send me a Morse code message. I'd seen something like that in a YouTube video once. Probably a loose connection or maybe a bad capacitor in the power board. I wasn't sure yet, but I figured I'd start with the basics and work my way up. I set my bag down on the floor and got to work, unplugging the TV and sliding it away from the wall so I could get to the back. Jake's apartment is small, so I was basically wedged between the TV stand and the couch, trying not to knock over the stack of game controllers. Empty soda cans and random junk piled up around me. Sarah brought me a coffee, which was clutch because I hadn't had any yet that day. "You're a lifesaver, Matt," she said, setting the mug down on the coffee table. We chatted for a minute about nothing in particular. Work, the weather, how Jake's obsession with fantasy football was getting out of hand. Meanwhile, Jake was no help at all. He just kept yelling suggestions from the couch like, "Did you try turning it off and on again? Or maybe it's the remote batteries," a classic Jake. I rolled my eyes and told him to go make himself useful, like getting me another coffee or something. I was about 20 minutes into messing with the TV when I heard the front door open. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe a neighbor dropping by or Jake's delivery guy with the pizza he was always ordering. But then I heard a woman's voice, warm and a little loud, saying, "Sarah, honey, I brought those spices you asked for." It was Sarah's mom, Linda. I'd met her a couple of times before. Once at a barbecue Jake threw last summer and maybe another time when she stopped by to drop something off. She's in her late 40s, maybe early 50s with this super friendly energy that just pulls you in. She's always smiling, always asking how you're doing, like she genuinely cares about the answer. She's got this way of making you feel like you've known her forever, even if you've only talked for 5 minutes. I was still half buried behind the TV, surrounded by a nest of cables when Linda walked into the living room. "Oh, who's this?" she said, her voice all curious and upbeat. I poked my head out, probably looking like a total mess with dust on my jeans and a screwdriver in my hand. "Hey, Linda, it's me, Matt," I said, giving her a quick wave, "just trying to fix this TV before Jake has a meltdown." She laughed, this big, genuine laugh that filled the room, and said, "Well, aren't you handy? Good luck with that old thing." I grinned and went back to work, feeling a little boost from her enthusiasm. There's something about getting a compliment, even a small one, that makes you want to prove you're worth it. Linda wandered into the kitchen to talk to Sarah, and I could hear them chatting about some family recipe. Something about a casserole Linda was teaching Sarah to make. It sounded like one of those dishes that's been passed down for generations, the kind you only learn by standing next to someone in the kitchen while they show you how to measure the ingredients just right. Jake, meanwhile, had disappeared to grab a snack, leaving me to wrestle with the TV alone. I didn't mind. There's something kind of zen about working on electronics, getting lost in the wires, testing connections, trying to solve the puzzle. I'd narrowed it down to a loose HDMI cable and maybe a dusty input port. I cleaned everything up with some compressed air I had in my bag, tightened the connections, and plugged the TV back in to test it. The screen lit up, and for the first time in probably weeks, it stayed steady. No flickering, no blackouts. I felt like I just won a gold medal. Jake came back, saw the TV working, and gave me a fist bump. "Dude, you're a legend," he said, plopping back onto the couch like he'd done all the work himself. Sarah poked her head out of the kitchen and grinned. "Nice job, Matt. You're hired." I laughed and started packing up my tools, figuring my work was done. I was zipping up my backpack when Linda came back into the living room, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked at me, then at the TV, and her face lit up. "Wow, you really fixed it. That's impressive," she said. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, but I'll admit it felt good to get the props. There's nothing like that moment when you solve a problem and everyone's looking at you like you're some kind of wizard. Then she said it out of nowhere with this casual but kind of curious tone. She goes, "So, Matt, do you want to stay longer?" I froze like my brain just hit pause. It wasn't a weird question on its own. People invite you to stick around all the time, right? But there was something about the way she said it. Her eyes locked on mine, her smile just a little too warm, like she was really hoping I'd say yes. I glanced at Jake, who was back on his phone, totally oblivious, scrolling through whatever app he was obsessed with that day. Sarah was still in the kitchen, humming to herself, chopping vegetables or something. I was standing there holding my backpack, feeling like I just walked into a scene I didn't know how to navigate. Stay longer," I said, probably sounding like a complete idiot. My voice might have even cracked a little. "I don't know." Linda nodded, still smiling like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Yeah, hang out," she said. "We're making dinner and you did such a great job with the TV. It would be nice to have you stick around." Okay, so maybe it was just a friendly invite. I mean, she's Sarah's mom. She's just being nice, right? She's probably the kind of person who invites everyone to stay for dinner, like it's no big deal. But my brain was doing some assaults. I'm 25, single, and not exactly used to getting dinner invites from my friend's girlfriend's mom. It felt off. Not in a bad way, just unexpected, like I'd missed a step going down the stairs. I mumbled something about having plans, which was a lie because my big plan for the night was to go home and binge some show on Netflix. I thanked her anyway, trying to keep it polite, but not too awkward. She just nodded, still smiling, and said, "Well, you're welcome anytime." Then she turned and went back to the kitchen like nothing had happened. Jake didn't seem to notice anything, and Sarah was too busy with her cooking to care. I grabbed my stuff and headed out, telling Jake I'd catch him later. As I walked to my car, I kept replaying that moment in my head. "Do you want to stay longer?" It was such a simple question, but it stuck with me. Was she just being polite? Was there something else behind it? I had no idea, and honestly I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The drive home was weird. I kept thinking about Linda's tone, her smile, the way she looked at me. I'm not the kind of guy who reads too much into things. Usually I'm pretty chill. Just go with the flow. But this had me rattled. I mean, she's Sarah's mom. She's got to be twice my age, maybe more. But there was something about her energy, this confidence that was hard to ignore. It wasn't just that she was nice. She had this way of carrying herself. Like she knew exactly who she was and wasn't afraid to show it. It made me wonder if I'd missed something, like there was a subtext I wasn't picking up on, or maybe I was just overthinking it, turning a friendly gesture into something it wasn't. When I got home, I tossed my backpack on the couch and checked my phone. I texted Jake to make sure the TV was still working, and he replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a "you're the man." I thought about bringing up Linda's comment, but how do you even ask something like that? "Hey dude, did your girlfriend's mom seem flirty?" Yeah, no way. I'd sound like a paranoid weirdo and Jake would probably laugh in my face. So, I let it go, but it kept nagging at me like a song stuck in your head that you can't shake. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The way her voice sounded. The way her eyes didn't waver when she asked me to stay. Over the next few days, I try to keep busy. I work in IT support for a small company. Nothing glamorous, just helping people reset their passwords and figure out why their printers won't connect to the Wi-Fi. Steady work pays the bills, but it's not exactly thrilling. Still, it gave me something to focus on, something to distract me from that weird moment at Jake's place. But every now and then, Linda's voice would pop into my head. "Do you want to stay longer?" I started wondering about her, like, what's her deal? I knew a little bit from Siri. She'd mentioned once that her mom was divorced, had been for a few years. Linda lived alone, worked at some accounting firm downtown, and seemed to have her life together. She wasn't the stereotypical mama type though. She had this energy, this spark that made her seem, I don't know, younger, not in a trying to hard way, but like she was still out there living her life, not just coasting. I kept telling myself to stop thinking about it. It was just a random comment, probably meant nothing. But then I'd remember her smile, the way she leaned in just a little when she talked to me, and I'd start wondering again, why did she ask me that? Was it just her being friendly? Or was there something else going on? And why was I even thinking about this so much? I'm not the kind of guy who gets hung up on stuff like this, but there was something about that moment that felt different, like it had shifted something in me I didn't even know was there. About a week later, Jake texted me again, this time just to hang out. No tech emergency, just a chill night watching a movie at his place. I almost said no because part of me was still weirded out by the whole Linda thing. I didn't want to run into her again and have to deal with that awkward feeling in my chest. But I also didn't want to be that guy who starts acting weird around his friend for no reason. So I said sure and headed over. When I got there, Sarah was there but no Linda. I was kind of relieved but also, and I hate to admit this, may be a little disappointed. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's not like I was hoping for anything. But there was this tiny part of me that was curious, that wanted to see if she'd say something else. Give me some clue about what she meant that day. We ended up watching some dumb action movie, the kind with explosions every 5 minutes and a plot you don't even bother following. We ordered pizza, cracked open a few beers, and it was a good time. Just like old times before, that weird moment with Linda threw me off. But at one point, while Jake was in the bathroom, Sarah casually mentioned that her mom had asked about me. My heart did this weird little jump like I just missed a step on a staircase. "Oh yeah," I said, trying to sound as casual as possible, like I didn't care at all. "What did she say?" Sarah shrugged, grabbing a slice of pizza. "She just asked if you were coming over again. Said you seemed nice." Jake came back right then and laughed, saying, "Yeah, Matt's the TV whisperer. Of course, she thinks he's nice." And that was it. The conversation moved on, but I was stuck on that. Linda had asked about me. Why was it just because I fixed the TV, or was there more to it? I didn't see Linda again for a while after that, but the whole thing stayed with me. I started noticing little things like how I'd get a bit nervous whenever Jake mentioned Sarah's mom. It wasn't like I had a crush on her or anything. Okay, maybe I was a little curious, but it was more about the mystery of it. What did she mean by that question? Was it just a friendly gesture? Or was there something else going on? I even thought about asking Sarah, but that felt like crossing a line. Like, what was I supposed to say? "Hey, is your mom into younger guys?" Yeah, that would go over great. I'd probably never be invited back to Jake's place again. Months went by and life went back to normal. I fixed a few more gadgets for friends, a laptop with a busted hard drive, a router that wouldn't connect, and hung out with Jake and Sarah whenever they had people over. I tried not to overthink that one weird moment with Linda, but it was always there in the back of my mind, like a little itch I couldn't scratch. Every now and then, I'd catch myself wondering about her. I'd see an older woman at the grocery store or at a coffee shop, and I'd think about Linda. Not in a creepy way, just curious like, what's it like to be her? To be that confident, that comfortable in your own skin? To ask a question that throws someone like me completely off balance. I don't know why it stuck with me so much, but it did. Then about 6 months later, it happened again. Jake was throwing a small party at his place. Nothing big, just a few friends, some drinks and music. I showed up early to help set up because of course I did. I'm the guy who gets roped into fixing the speakers or figuring out why the Bluetooth won't connect. I was messing with the sound system when Linda walked in carrying a tray of homemade cookies. I swear she's like the ultimate mom stereotype in that way. Always showing up with food. She saw me and smiled. That same warm, slightly mischievous smile that had thrown me off the first time. "Matt, good to see you," she said, setting the tray down on the counter. I nodded, trying to act normal, but my brain was already back in that living room replaying her question from months ago. The party was fun. Low-key, just a bunch of people hanging out, talking and laughing, but I kept catching Linda glancing my way. Or maybe I was imagining it. It's hard to tell when you're already overanalyzing everything. At one point, she came over to where I was standing by the snack table and started chatting. Just normal stuff. How's work? What's new with me? That kind of thing. She asked about my job, and I told her about a particularly annoying client who kept calling me because he couldn't figure out how to unmute his Zoom calls. She laughed, and it felt easy comfortable. But then she leaned in a little closer and said, "You know, you're always welcome here. Don't be a stranger." And there it was again. That tone, that look, it wasn't overt or anything, but it was enough to make my pulse jump. I laughed it off, said something dumb about being busy, and she just smiled and walked away like it was no big deal. I didn't stay long after that. I told Jake I had an early morning, which was true this time. I had a work thing and headed out. But as I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What was her deal? Was she just super friendly? The kind of person who makes everyone feel special? Or was she flirting? And why did it even matter to me? I'm not the kind of guy who gets hung up on stuff like this. But there was something about Linda that got under my skin. Not in a bad way, just in a way that made me question things like, what do I even want? Why was I so thrown by a simple question? It wasn't just about her. It was about me too. Like, what did it say about me that I was still thinking about this months later? It's been a while since that party and I still don't have answers. I see Jake and Sarah all the time and sometimes Linda's there too. She's always nice, always smiling. But she hasn't said anything else that feels loaded. Maybe I made it all up in my head. Maybe she was just being herself and I'm the one who turned it into something weird. But every time I think about that day, that question, do you want to stay longer? It feels like a little spark that I don't know how to put out. It's not like I'm obsessed or anything, but it's there. This tiny moment that changed the way I see things, even if I don't fully understand why. I keep going back to Jake's place, fixing whatever random gadget breaks next, because that's what I do. And every time I'm there, part of me wonders if Linda will show up, if she'll say something else that throws me off balance. So far, she hasn't. But I can't help feeling like there's something unresolved, something I'm not quite getting. Maybe it's just me overanalyzing a moment that meant nothing. Or maybe it's something more, something I'm not ready to figure out yet. Either way, it's changed me in some small way. I notice things now, little glances, subtle tones that I never paid attention to before. I don't know if I'll ever get clarity on what Linda meant or if it even matters. But one thing's for sure, I'll never look at a flickering TV the same way again. It's funny how life works. You know, you go to do a simple favor for a friend and somehow you end up with a question that sticks with you, that makes you see the world just a little differently. Play.